Okay, so with that, we'll go ahead and get started. Welcome, everyone. My name is David Azevedo. I am the Associate Director for Advocacy and Community Engagement for the AARP California State Office. And you're here today with AARP California and our esteemed experts and panelists to discuss home energy scores in the Bay Area. And our team here in AARP California works with staff and volunteers to deliver results for our over 3.2 million members here in the Golden State on issues that matter most to older adults and their families. And this new program today that you're joining, Power Your Savings, is particularly timely as Californians, especially those of us in the San Francisco Bay Area, currently, unfortunately, pay some of the highest electricity rates in the nation. Extreme weather is driving us to use more energy, especially as the summers get longer and hotter. And energy prices and average temperatures are not the only thing increasing. By 2030, over a quarter of California's population will be over the age of 60. That means more folks will be on limited and fixed incomes, challenged by any price increase in something as essential as keeping the power on. Fortunately, new federal and state programs are offering many older adults and their families a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to make their homes more energy efficient, potentially lowering utility bills. Today, we'll be joined by experts that are knowledgeable about some of these programs, specifically a pilot program on home energy scores currently only available in the San Francisco Bay Area, but hopefully will be expanding in the near future. If this is your first time joining AARP for a Power Your Savings episode, welcome. The goal of this program is to connect you, our members, and your families with easy-to-understand information about how to lower your home energy bills. Our first episode was in this past October, which you can find on YouTube, and we'll put a link in the chat here in a couple minutes just so that you can see it. And that episode gave a broad overview of the numerous energy savings programs available to consumers right now. And in the coming year ahead on Power Your Savings with AARP, we'll dive deeper into each of those programs, discussing everything from financial assistance programs, how to better insulate your home to keep it cooler during the hot summer months and warmer during the cold, and new technology that can help lower your energy bills, like electric heat pump water heaters. With that, let's get started with today's episode on the Home Energy Scores program. I'm joined today by AARP member Joelle Poynton, who volunteers with the California State Office. And I'll hand that mic over to Joelle just for a few brief remarks from his own personal perspective, being a volunteer and an AARP member, and then come back to introduce our panelists for today. Joelle, over to you.
Thank you, David. I'm a member of the San Diego advocacy team here in San Diego, and my background is I have a master's in environmental science, and I've spent my entire career in the environmental field. My last major gig was establishing the electric transportation program for one of the major utilities here in California. My personal project for the last 25 years has been making my home energy efficient. I started with insulation, added solar, did the appliance electrification, and electrified my transportation. My overall goal has always been to lower my energy use, lower my costs, and most importantly, to lower my carbon footprint.
Great, thank you so much, Joelle. And now we're going to be introducing our three experts on home energy scores in the Bay Area, and then it'll be followed by a question and answer session. Now I'll spotlight our panelists for you to meet them and share their brief biographies. First up is Megan Gilley-Plog, who serves as the Home Energy Score and Home Performance with Energy Star Manager for the U.S. Department of Energy's Building Technologies Office. Prior to her role with the Building Technologies Office, she worked with the Department of Energy's State Energy Program, supporting state-level energy efficiency and renewable energy policies. She also spearheaded the creation of environmental and energy savings programs in the small mountain town of Briscoe, Colorado. Gilley holds a Bachelor of Science degree in Environmental Science and a Master's of Marine and Environmental Policy, both from the University of Washington, and has been recognized by the Department of Energy's Emerging Leaders Program and the Excellence in Government Program. Welcome, Gilley. Thanks for joining us. And then we'll turn it over. And then our second panelist today is Emily Alvarez. She's a program manager with Stop Waste, where she leads the Bay Area Regional Energy Network, also known as BayREN, Green Labeling Program and provides climate action support to cities in Alameda County. The Green Labeling Program promotes the U.S. Department of Energy's Home Energy Score and aims to increase energy transparency in the single-family home marketplace throughout the 9 Bay Area counties. Emily's background crosses green building, planning, and climate policy. She's worked at the U.S. Green Building Council on the development of the LEED rating system, and for both public agencies and the private sector advancing energy policy, reducing greenhouse gas emissions, and developing long-range planning documents. She holds a master's in city planning from UC Berkeley and a BA in architectural environmental studies from Brown University. So welcome, Emily. And joining Emily is Jenny Berg, who recently retired from the Association of Bay Area Governments, where she was the director of the energy section. She was also the administrator of the Bay Area Regional Energy Network since its inception in 2013. And she'll be sharing her personal experience and professional experience with us today on home energy scores and related issues. So please give a virtual round of applause to all of our panelists today. Thank you so much, Gilly, Emily, and Jenny for joining us. So we'll be starting today with a presentation by Gilly. So we'll put her up on the screen, and I will share my screen since I will be the slide navigator.
Thank you, David. Thanks for the great introduction, and thank you again for sharing my slides.
All good. We love technology here at AARP. So let's make sure that we get all set up. Do I have to switch it around?
Yeah, you need to switch it around, I think.
There we go. Okay, take it away, Gilly.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. I am Gilly Plog. As David mentioned, I am the program manager for Home Energy Score with the U.S. Department of Energy's Building Technologies Office. And we can go to the next slide, please. So in 2012, the DOE launched the National Home Energy Score program to give homeowners, buyers, and renters a low-cost, reliable method to understand a home's energy efficiency. Home Energy Score's goal from the outset has always been to build market value for home energy efficiency through standard data and metrics that are applicable to all existing homes. The tool does this by providing renters, homeowners, and home buyers cost-effective recommendations to reduce energy use and costs, producing reliable home energy efficiency information for consumers to consider in real estate transactions, and integrating energy information into financing products to bolster the market for comfortable energy efficiency homes. Right now, our target markets are existing single-family homes and townhomes. And currently, the national labs that DOE partners with to maintain and update the scoring tool are working on an update that will include the ability to score manufactured homes, fuel switching options, so electrification, and a trial incorporating multifamily units with the score being on a per unit basis. Next slide, please. Thank you. So the home energy score is an asset rating, and an asset rating seeks to quantify the energy efficiency of a building based solely upon the inherent components of the house. The scoring tool captures data on insulation levels and heating equipment efficiencies, but does not take into account thermostat settings, appliances, or plug loads, because the energy used to operate these components can vary widely depending on occupant behavior. The way the scoring tool defines home assets for home energy score is displayed in the pyramid figure above. And the assets that the score takes into account are those within that dashed box. An asset score allows homes to be compared on an apples to apples basis because it compares houses to one another based on all their assets and not how occupants operate the houses. The home energy scoring tool assesses the effect of changes in a home's assets, while the occupant-dependent factors and behaviors are assumed to be somewhat constant. The graphic on the right shows an example of the first page of a home energy score report, so what you would be provided with if you were to get a home energy score assessment. The report includes 3 things: the score itself, facts about the home and its estimated energy use, and recommendations to improve the home's energy use. Scoring a 1 does not mean that your home is poorly built. A beautiful home with up-to-date equipment can still get a low score if the square footage is high or if there's insufficient insulation. A low score just means that there is significant room for improvement. Scoring a 10 does not mean that your home cannot improve. Even a home that uses less energy than most of its peers may benefit from additional energy efficiency or renewable energy investments. If recommendations are provided with your score, consider if those cost-effective measures make the most sense for your home. Next slide, please. A home energy score is great for understanding just that baseline energy use of your home. So whether it would be, you operating that home, or if you had family members come to stay with you, or you rented out that home, you would still understand that baseline energy use of your home. Scores also provide a list of cost-effective energy efficiency recommendations tailored to your home. We only provide recommendations that have a combined payback period of 10 years or less. A home energy score can also help improve your home value. Higher home energy scores were associated with higher purchase prices based on a study that will be linked in the slides. I'm not going to present on it now, but if you want the data, it's there. It was a 0.5% higher purchase price for each point increase on the home energy score scale. Again, home energy score is a great way to begin understanding your home's assets and envelope. And that is all that I have for you today.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Gilly. Appreciate that. And so if you have any questions for Gilly, we're going to be taking our questions in the chat. So if you scroll over to the right side of your screen, usually that's where the chat feature is, and you can enter any questions that you might have. And we'll be taking those questions once we get through all of our panelists today. So just wanted to let folks know about that opportunity. But thank you so much, Gilly, for that presentation from the Department of Energy. So with that, we'll turn it over to Emily now for her presentation.
Hi, everyone. My name is Emily Alvarez, and let me get my screen share going. Okay. Great. My name is Emily Alvarez. I'm a program manager with Stop Waste, which is an Alameda County local government agency. We work as Alameda County's representative in the Bay Area Regional Energy Network, or BayREN. So I'm now going to take kind of that high-level overview that Gilly gave of what home energy score is at the national level and talk about what we've done to make it fit our local context a little bit better, as well as how you can get a home energy score if you're within the Bay Area. So a little bit of background would first be, who is BayREN? BayREN is a program administrator of ratepayer funds from the California Public Utilities Commission. Basically, all that means is that we get funding from all of your utility bills. They get pooled at the statewide level, and we get funding from, we apply for funding from the Public Utilities Commission to run a variety of energy efficiency programs in the Bay Area. So a lot of those programs are focused on education about energy efficiency, but we also have a whole bunch of rebates and other assistance on how our buildings can be more energy efficient. We do have 10 programs that cover pretty much every sector, from the public sector to building codes, commercial buildings, multifamily buildings. But today I'm going to concentrate on our green labeling program, which is where home energy score is nested under. So we have been running this program through BayREN since 2018. And since 2015, we've been doing home energy scores, partially because the city of Berkeley actually has a mandate that requires a home energy score at the time of listing of a home. That passed in 2015, so we kind of were piloting it locally. That's what those kind of green BESO scores, the Berkeley Building Emissions Savings Ordinance scores. But in 2018, when we launched as a full program through BayREN, We have started doing thousands of scores a year, and in 2023, we did almost, I think about 56 or 5,700 scores in 1 year. So now over the lifetime of our program, we've scored about 23,000 homes in the Bay Area. And last year gave out over $1 million in rebates. So I mentioned some of this, but basically in 2023 alone, we worked with over 50 home energy score assessors, again, 5,600 scores and over $1.2 million in rebates. So when might you get a home energy score? Since Gilly described a little bit about what a score is, I'm not going to go into a whole lot more detail, although a little bit more on the next slide, but there's a lot of really great reasons and times to get a score. A few of them are, if you're interested in renovating your home, you might really easily think about things that are cosmetic, like a kitchen remodel, bathroom remodel, but you can also get a score first to figure out if there's any energy efficiency improvements that could be incorporated into that scope of work and might make sense for you. Maybe your home is really drafty or hot or uncomfortable in some way and you want to figure out why. You also might have a really high utility bill and you're curious how you might be able to lower those monthly costs. All of this equipment, our furnaces, our hot water heaters, have a useful life. Maybe you are curious about when that equipment should be replaced and you want to be able to plan for that so that you don't wind up in an emergency situation where you don't have hot water for a little while. And then also demonstrating the value of those energy improvements you made before selling the home. So if you do have a really energy efficient home and you wanted it to be marketed that way when it's time to sell, the home energy score is a really great tool to point out those features and to say that you are a more energy efficient home in comparison to the housing stock. Or maybe you, on the other side of the real estate spectrum, you just bought a house and you don't know that much about it and you want to know more. So what is a home energy score and what it isn't? I have this on here to kind of just give a little bit more context for when you're ready to make that phone call and hire a home energy score assessor, some of the things you might want to talk through with them. So as Gilly mentioned, home energy score is a simplified, primarily visual energy assessment. A certified assessor will come to your home and collect over 50 data points on your home's construction type, the appliances you have, the size of your home, and more. They will need access to kind of all parts of the home, including any attics, basements, crawl spaces, and the inside and outside. So that's really important to note because in my house, for example, our attic crawl space is in my husband's closet, and so we need to clear out the whole closet to let someone up there. But it's really important because it's where our ducts are. So how can you really make a full assessment of your house if you can't access key parts of it? It does not include, at the baseline, diagnostic testing, things like a blower door test or a duct blasting test. So those type of tests will give you a lot more detail on information like leakage in the home. So for a blower door, they kind of take all the air out of the home, and then they rate kind of how long it takes for air to infiltrate back in. And that's finding where all of those tiny leaks might be, whether it's around can lights or cracks in windows. And so it'll let you know how much leakage there is. But in the home energy score, for example, they aren't going to do that test necessarily. But if your house has not been professionally air sealed, and if it's over a certain age, chances are that needs to be done. So you'll probably get that recommendation anyway, even if they haven't done the test for it. Similar with duct blasting, that is, they run kind of the air through your ducts and measure that amount of leakage, versus what the home energy score would do is have someone look at the ducts and they can take a look at whether or not they seem well insulated, well sealed, if they're detached in any locations, and be able to make a recommendation about your ducts, but they wouldn't be able to say, and your ducts leak 40%. So if you are interested in those additional data points, many of our home energy score assessors can add on some of those tests, but you would just want to talk about that when you call up home energy score assessors. So that would also add extra time and money to the cost of a home energy score, but some people find that extra information extremely valuable. The home energy score takes about 1 hour, depending on the size of the home. So if you do have a very large home, maybe 3,000 or 4,000 square feet, multiple stories, maybe more than one HVAC unit, it could take longer. Or again, if you want to add some of those testing, it will take a little bit bit longer, but the basic home energy score is pretty quick. And if you do any of that testing, it can fit into the home energy score and provide a more accurate score for your house if you choose to do it. So how to get one? I have a link here, and we'll also be sharing that link out. But basically, we have about, like I mentioned, kind of 20 or so home energy score companies, and then over 50 home energy score individuals. So some companies have more than one person. You can find our directory there. We have a ton of, this little map is where all of our home energy score assessors are located. So pretty much anywhere in the Bay Area will be covered. Some of them you can filter by your county if you're looking for a home energy score in another language, and other applicable filters in order to be able to figure out who might be best to do a score in your area or who you might want to call. So as I mentioned previously, if you're interested in other testing, I would ask if the assessor is able to do that and how much it might cost and how long it might take, because that can help you when shopping around. Costs will vary based on the location, the size of the home, what exactly you're having done. The average range is about $250 to $500. And the great news is that BayREN offers up to a $250 rebate per home scored. So oftentimes our rebate can cover 50 to 100% of the score price. So what do you get? Gilly showed some kind of what comes out of the main home energy score tool. But we have actually a custom report through BayREN that provides more information. One thing I'm going to note is you can see this says draft. We're redoing our score report now, so I wanted to have the new report up, even though it's not technically live yet. So if you get we're hoping it will be live by the end of the month. So if you happen to get super motivated by this webinar and call someone tomorrow, it might look a little bit different, but hopefully very soon this will be launching. And so I wanted to, this is kind of small, so I'm going to point out some key features of what you get with the home energy score report, and then you'll be able to take a closer look once the slides are shared. But basically at the top you have your home information, so the address, what the area is, who did the assessment, the date of the assessment, etc. Then what we do, sorry, is you'll get your current score from 1 to 10, as well as what shell improvements what your score would be if you made some basic building shell improvements. So building shell would be kind of, the outside encasement of your home. So whether insulation, if you improved windows, did air sealing, those kinds of things. And then also, since the state of California is really looking at electrifying all of our homes, we also will model a score if you took a house to be all electric. So we also will show what your estimated energy costs and energy consumption would be for both the current home as it is and those two different improvement pathways. Estimated carbon emissions also for those three situations, and that's on the front of the report. The second page of the report has some more information. So we have a list of kind of next steps if you want to take action and go from getting the report to making upgrades. We have some links for helpful rebate information and tax credit information. So these cover local rebates that we have through BayREN for single family homes. There's also state rebates available through Tech Clean California and a few other programs. Golden State Rebate is another one. Then there's the US rebate and tax credits through the Inflation Reduction Act. And because there's so much funding out there, which is really helpful, but also a little confusing, the last one on here is a link to a great resource called The Switch Is On, which has a kind of incentive finder where you can type in your address, and even if you want specific upgrades to be made, and then that will give you a list of all of the different rebates you might be eligible for. And then here's just some more detail about those building shell and electrification improvements. So it gives you a rundown of what your existing kind of condition is, and then what the recommended improvement is to increase your energy efficiency. Then at the bottom here, just some more information about how the calculations are done, how the recommendations are selected. And then I don't have it here, but there's also an optional third page that can have notes from your home energy score assessor. And that is a really helpful thing because they might provide a little bit more context about why attic insulation could be important, or when you might want to think about upgrading your hot water heater, potentially some information about your electrical panel, Safety information is also what they'll tend to include here. In my house, when I got my first score, my gas hot water heater was vented improperly, so they noted that. So lots of great information can also be included on that other page. And so before I turn it over to Jenny, I guess I'm wearing the same shirt right now, which is kind of funny, but I got a home energy score in 2019 for my 2-bedroom, 1-bath house in Oakland. It's a small house, less than 900 square feet, had some very minor improvements made. We had dual pane windows, we had some very old attic insulation. Our score turned out to be a 5, so 5 is an average house. Probably a lot of that is because, again, the house was smaller and had some minor stuff done, but I wasn't surprised that we were average. If anything, I was surprised that maybe we weren't more like a 4. And it gave me a really great list of options for things that I could do to upgrade my home. So it included things like doing wall insulation, insulating in our crawl space, redoing that attic insulation because it was not only old, but it wasn't kind of as much as really would be helpful to us. Also had recommendations for replacing our water heater, which was about 7 years old at the time, and our 25-year-old gas furnace. But I did not make those upgrades until 2022. I needed some more time to really think about it. Sorry about that, I'm getting over a cold, still have a bit of a cough. I needed some time to think about it, get our funding in place. So again, really helped me understand and be able to make decisions. But we did wait until 2022 to make those upgrades. And we did make almost all of them that were recommended to us. Here's me and our heat pump condenser outside. All right, I might need to end this and just turn it over to Jenny in a moment. But yeah, sorry. And so, yeah, we wound up then rescoring the house after all that work was done, and we went up from a 5 to a 10, which was really exciting. So, as mentioned, this is available right now to anyone in the Bay Area because of where our funding comes from. But we were approved by the Public Utilities Commission to expand our program statewide starting in 2026. So I know that sounds really far away, but in the policy world, it might as well be tomorrow. If you're interested on tracking those efforts, then you can visit our homescoresca.org website, which is the one for the statewide program. Otherwise, just bayrev.org/HES is where you can find the Bay Area program information. And then this is my contact info, so you can always just reach out to me directly if you have more information. And I will turn it over to Jenny.
Thank you, and I do not have any slides. So I wanted to talk a little bit about what motivated me to get a home energy score, what the process was like, and also what we learned and have done subsequently. So what motivated me? I was the administrator of BayRen, so obviously I had been working closely with Emily and had been hearing a lot about the home energy score. At the time, the rebate covered the entire cost of the score, and so I thought, I was interested in learning about my home. Also, with all of my improvements, I think about the future and the increase in value as we, if and when we ever put our house in the market. We had thought about at one time moving, and I really wanted to market the home as a green home with all the energy efficiency attributes, and that was something that that the home energy score I was interested in doing. The process was extremely simple. If I recall, I was actually home from work sick, so I was in my pajamas and a robe. I think it took less than 1 hour, very unobtrusive, very, very respectful of our home. So that was not, not like prior contractors coming to the home. And what I learned I was a little surprised. We do have solar panels. When we had them installed, it came with some a free energy audit and some work that was done. So we got a score of 9 out of 10, which was kind of a good surprise. And despite the high score, there were still certain recommendations that were made. One of them had to do with our water heater, a recommendation to get a gas storage unit, which we have done. And the other one had to do with our home was drafty from the windows. So that was a rather expensive endeavor that we just did last year. And the change in the comfort of the home was noticeable. So while the home energy score has energy in the title and it is about the energy cost and savings, there's also co-benefits such as health. So while my home was not a huge energy user, it really was uncomfortable in a lot of rooms because of the air that was coming in through the window. So that was another thing that I learned from the home energy score. Yeah, so any questions about the process? It was extremely easy. When we do sell our home, whenever that day comes, it will certainly be something that I will, talk to the realtor about marketing, because I think it's very easy to read and it compares our home to other homes, which I think is a very good selling point for a home.
Well, great. Well, thank you so much for sharing that, Jenny. And let's go ahead and spotlight here all of our panelists. We'll get everyone into there. And I think we got everyone there. So thank you so much, Gilly and Emily and Jenny, for your presentations today. That was so helpful and insightful in walking us through what home energy scores are, how to get one, what are the, diving right into it, and then having the personal experiences was great to hear from both Emily and Jenny as well. And it's a shame I'm in Sacramento, so I guess I'll have to wait till 2026 to get one of those, but I'm very much looking forward to it. So we have a very small group here, but I'm going to go ahead and actually launch a quick poll that I kind of just spun up here just to kind of get folks' general kind of feedback. And then after we do the poll, we're going to do a couple facilitated questions. I know I have a couple questions. Joelle, too, might have a couple questions for our panelists. And then I do see some folks starting to add questions into the chat or messaging me directly with their questions. So we'll make sure that all the questions are answered there. But let's go ahead and I'm going to launch this poll here. And we just have 3 quick questions for people to get their kind of sense on a couple things. So first one, I kind of see how familiar is the group here that's attending with us today with home energy savings projects. Have you maybe you've done maybe not a home energy score yourself, but there's also home energy audits that also exist, insulation projects, installing energy efficient appliances. Would like to get the audience perspective on that. So if you can go ahead, can folks see everybody can see the poll, right? Okay, great. We're starting to see people answer. That's good. And then the second question is, after hearing today's presentations, how likely are you to look into having a home energy score assessment for your home? Very likely, somewhat likely, maybe, not interested. And also, too, since this is the very beginning of AARP's Power Your Savings webinar series, we did have our first one in October, and I said I would link that into the chat. I will follow up very quickly with that link so that you could see it if you haven't already. But we'd like to hear from you, from folks that have joined today. What other topics would you like to see? Home energy assistance-wise, home energy installation-wise, project-wise. So looking forward to get some folks there. So we'll keep that poll open. And can folks still see the screen even with the poll open? Yeah. Okay, so let's go ahead and actually ask the first question. We have just a general kind of question for Gilly. I'm thinking back to your great kind of slide around the pyramid and kind of what the home energy score covers and what it doesn't. And was just wondering, why aren't appliances part of that home energy score? You mentioned that very briefly, but do you want to just talk a little bit more about why things like stoves or heat pumps or gas furnaces aren't included?
So those kind of appliances it's the smaller ones that, folks utilize on a daily basis that are not necessarily, like your refrigerator or your clothing washer and dryer, your dishwasher. Those kinds of appliances aren't included. However, things that are inherent to the home, things that you would expect to be there when you first move in, those will all be included. Those count as part of your home's assets.
Okay, that's great to hear. And actually, we had a question from Bob was wondering if we could walk us through the slide showing savings from different projects. If I electrify, won't my electric bill go up? And I'm wondering, do we know what slide that I can bring up the slide again?
I don't
So
know
let's
if that
go
was
ahead.
one of mine.
Oh, I'm sorry, that was Emily. I was looking at you and reading the slide there. Emily, is it possible that you could bring up your slide to discuss that?
Yes, so I've got the slide up. Let's see if I can just get it to be bigger. So yes, so this is kind of showing the different scenarios. It is possible that your utility bill or your electricity bill could go up if you electrify. I mean, it's a reality of the situation. It looks like in this situation, if you did after full home electrification, it does overall your utility bill goes down, but that's because you don't have a gas bill anymore. So if you're switching from a gas to an electric appliance, then you're obviously getting rid of the gas bill, but adding a new electric load. And while electricity might cost kind of more than natural gas does in California, natural gas is fairly cheap in California at the moment. As you mentioned, electricity rates are pretty high. These electric appliances are extremely efficient. So especially if you're pairing them with energy efficiency kind of building shell measures like insulation, you might actually still see an overall decrease in your bills because you are just using less energy altogether. And so, these kind of heat pump water heaters are easily 3 to 4 times more efficient than like a gas storage water heater. And then especially if you're going to pair it with something like solar, there are lots of ways that you can just also make it so that your house doesn't have to use electricity from the grid as often, or like I said, use as much energy in general. If you have a gas furnace in an uninsulated house, you're gonna be running that all the time because so much of that heat that you're paying for is then gonna be lost. But if you insulate that shell and then put in a very highly efficient heat pump system, then you're not even needing to turn on that system as often. You're keeping more of that heat you paid for inside the house itself. And so we always really do recommend looking at those building shell improvements first. But we hope that there are situations where you'll be able to kind of bring that bill down always in the end. But there are some particular situations where things could go up. For example, a heat pump HVAC system, heating, ventilation, air conditioning system, both heats and cools. So again, in my house, we just had a gas furnace. We didn't have any air conditioning. Now we have both, which is actually one of the reasons why we wanted to do that. It's getting hotter here in Oakland in the summer. We're working from home more often. So we really wanted that air conditioning, but you also then can't say, well, previously I had no air conditioning, now we're paying for that air conditioning, but it really is just worth it. So as Jenny mentioned, there's certainly cost is a huge part of this, but energy efficiency really is about so much more than just utility bills.
That's great. Thank you so much, Emily, for that. And we can go ahead and unshare that slide there. And I want to make sure that we also add on our other facilitator here, Joelle, with us. So we're still taking questions here from the chat. There's some really great questions. Nithya asks, if there are improvement recommendations from the assessment, do you provide reputable companies to help get these improvements done? Who'd like to take that?
I can. I think we're unmuted, right? Yeah, okay, so I just glare on the controls. So Bayron, as I mentioned, also has a single family program that provides rebates. One of the great things about that program is similarly as we have our kind of vetted list of assessors, there's a vetted list of contractors locally. So actually at that same bayron.org website, right at the top, there's a link that says find an energy professional. The link I provided in my PowerPoint specifically filters for home energy score assessors, but if you just go to that plain website, then you'll be able to find HVAC contractors, insulation contractors, people who can do water heaters, and a lot more. And so any of those have kind of enrolled in our program, which means they have gone through some basic training on these things. They will get the proper permits. They fill out any rebate paperwork that you might be eligible for. And then also if their worst case is a situation where there's a complaint or an issue with one of those assessor or contractor companies, we can remove them from our program. So we do consider them to be kind of a pre-vetted list.
That's great. Thank you so much for that. And we do have another question here in the chat, very similar. How can I find kind of a good heat pump HVAC company? So that question was essentially answered there. That's great to hear. And from a personal experience, you can always check your local utility as well. I'm not quite sure if there's any utilities in the Bay Area that do this, but here in Sacramento, SMUD is my local utility, and they had a list of good kind of companies to check out, and that's how I was able to do a project for mine. We also have a question too from Joelle, so we'll go ahead and turn it over to Joelle.
It's not really a question. I'm really big on summarizing, getting my bullet points when I watch these presentations. So what I heard from Department of Energy was the home energy score is going to give me a standardized way of comparing my home to other homes. And by doing that, it'll give me a priority rating of projects that I may want to look at to improve my energy use. It may increase the value of my resale because it gives people that are shopping for homes an easy way to compare homes. And when I look at Bayron's presentation, I see that they will help me locate people that are qualified as auditors to do these types of home energy scores. It'll take about a 1-hour investment of my time, and they can help pay for the costs of that up to $250 for the 9 counties that exist in the Bay Area. Did I miss anything?
No, that was a great summary. Thank you, Joelle.
I agree.
Thanks so much for that, Joelle. That was really helpful. So I did have another kind of follow-up question for, let's see, for Emily. And I think also somebody had a very similar question in the chat. What kind of questions should we be asking our assessor when they do one of these assessments?
Yeah, so as I mentioned on our website, you can filter by a few things, which will help rule out some folks. But once you kind of find what you're looking for, you still might have a few different companies to choose from. So our companies have kind of a range of backgrounds. So some of them are energy auditors, some of them might be HVAC contractors, some are home inspectors. So that can help a little bit. Like, for example, if you think you might really want to make a heat pump upgrade, maybe you do want to go with someone who is an HVAC contractor, or maybe you don't because you want like a neutral assessment and not someone who then you might want to then go out and get those kind of quotes on HVAC systems separately. So that's one thing to consider. I'd also consider, as I mentioned, if you want any other testing done, and of course always talk to them about price.
That's great to hear. And, another kind of related question that just kind of pops in my head, we all get those mailers from those HVAC companies in our mailboxes they kind of promise everything, right? I mean, that's kind of the basis of a lot of these mailers, right? Is that they say, oh yeah, here's a free home energy audit or assessment. And from there, they kind of try to get you to buy certain services or subscriptions or what have you. Gilly or Jenny or Emily, do you have any kind of advice for people to kind of keep an eye out on making sure that they don't get roped into something that maybe not very financially helpful, and to kind of have a good eye on being a good consumer when looking at these kind of advertisements?
That's a great question, and I'll take a first pass at it if y'all don't mind. Because I get these flyers too, and when looking at them, you really want to make sure, especially now that y'all know the price of a home energy score and the rebates that Bayron offers, you'll know how to make a good cost comparison, at least in your mind, on what sort of services these companies are offering. Another thing to keep in mind is what is the value that you want to get out of this assessment. So if you want to have company ABC come into your home and do a full-on energy audit, and you want to learn absolutely everything there is to know about your house, that's great. Feel free to do that. Just make sure that they are providing you with those cost-effective upgrades. as well as something that you could potentially use to measure your energy consumption and energy behaviors against your neighbors so that you have that value build. That's why I am biased because I do manage the home energy score program, but that's one of the reasons that I really, really like this program is that it's so comparable between two houses and it's easy to read. I would ask these companies for an example of an audit or an example of their report as well, so you can tell just exactly how much you need to learn, if it's going to be something that you can understand, those kinds of things. Just make sure that you're keeping up to date with all of that. Jenny?
Yeah, and I just want to add, I can recall several conversations I had with other energy efficiency implementers in Southern California, and they said, well, we offer the home energy score. And I said, oh, I wasn't aware that you were a DOE partner. So I bring this up just that there's confusion. I don't know if it's confusion, but there's a misconception about some of these scores. So I personally feel that the home energy score has the backing of the Department of Energy, that, you know, as Gilly said, it's a comparison of your house versus similar homes. So I think that having some type of backing, whether it's a government, you know, some type of program that seems legit as opposed to ABC contractors score or report, so I think so that would be my recommendation. If it's not the DOE home energy scores, it's something that has, you know, some seal of approval.
Yeah. And on that, and Gilly knows this, one of the responsibilities of us running this program is quality assurance. So we actually have to do a quality assurance check on a certain amount of our scores, because what that does is it removes some of that bias. So in theory, anyone you hire going into your home who's on our list, you should get the same score no matter what. And so we do that check where we rescore a certain amount. And if we don't get the same score that the assessor does, then we kind of go back with them and do additional training. And so it's really supposed to just make sure that there isn't kind of someone who's trying to upsell you or has like a certain bias in there, which is also one of the things I love about home energy score.
Yeah, and just one more thing on that. It's really easy to go to a contractor's website and see if they have DOE labeling on their things. Folks can only utilize the DOE label if they are, so the DOE home energy score label, or even DOE home performance with Energy Star label, if they have signed an agreement with us to do those quality assurance things and to make sure that they are training folks. So just a quick check of their website is a really easy way to find that out.
Great to hear. Thank you so much for that. So we had a couple other questions also here in the chat. Alma asks, do I have to pay upfront for improvement? Does anyone want to talk a little bit about, so say a home energy audit, you know, well, actually, let's actually add that in too. You know, what's that kind of payment process like for getting a home energy score? And, you know, what does that kind of look like when thinking about making a purchase or some sort of payment for, you know, working with contractors? Any kind of advice or general tips you can give for folks on that?
Yeah, for home energy score, we do allow the rebate to go either to the homeowner or to the assessor. That gets filled out on our application form. I'd say most of the time the homeowner elects to have it go to the assessor, and then the assessor will just kind of discount the price so that you don't have to pay more and then wait for a check in the mail. But if you prefer to get the check yourself, then you can kind of do that. So for home energy score, there's kind of both options depending on what you prefer. For the rebates through BayREN, they are rebates, which means you do pay up front, and then you would receive a check in the mail. So that's if you actually followed through and made like an energy efficiency improvement, like attic insulation. Because there's so many things out there right now, it kind of just depends on what program you're going after. So obviously federal tax credits happen after you purchase something. Many of the state rebates happen after you purchase. So most of them that are rebates right now, you'd have to pay up front. There are some low-income programs that would be what are called direct install, meaning that you don't pay anything, it just gets installed for you. Most of those you have to be kind of income qualified for. And then soon, hopefully sometime this year or next, there'll be other rebates available through the Inflation Reduction Act that are supposed to be at point of sale. And so that would also be a potential, like, you get that discount kind of upfront. So unfortunately, it's great that there's so much funding out there. It's a complicated landscape, and so that's why we do recommend, again, resources like the Switches On, which can help you navigate sort of what's out there right now.
I'm glad you mentioned the home energy assistance programs. Those are things like the CARE program, the FARA program. More to come on that. Here at Power Your Savings, we actually are looking to have our next episode, or one of our next episodes, focus on who can be eligible for that, what's it like to apply for that. And it's actually interesting. I was just looking at a statistic that all of these low income or lower income programs are actually undersubscribed, so not as many people are using them as those that are eligible for using them. So thank you for bringing that up, because there's a lot of great low income energy assistance programs available, and we here at AARP will be looking forward to share that with our members. Gilly,
oh, sorry. I was say for many of those, it goes by what's called area median income, and it's usually a percentage of that. So it also can be, especially seniors on a fixed income, right? You may not think of yourself as low income, maybe some of you, because of how things were when you were working, but it actually can be pretty common for retirees to still qualify in those income brackets because you are on a fixed income. So yeah, I would definitely check out some of those income qualified programs to see if you fit.
Great.
And if you don't fit into those income qualified programs, Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac both have green mortgage programs that you can utilize to do these kind of upgrades. And they are also inherently tied to home energy scores. So they require a home energy score before providing you with those mortgage products.
Now that's interesting. I haven't heard about that one. We may need to do a Power Your Savings episode on that. That's very interesting. So great. These are some great questions here. And we've got about 8 minutes left, and we still have a couple questions here in the chat. So Dale gets back to the really, one of the biggest questions here, which is, given the out of control electrical rates in California, how confident can one be that there will be any real savings that will not be erased by higher rates in the future? As a quick plug, AARP California was a party of record against the Pacific Gas and Electric rate increase. We were happy that they didn't get what they initially wanted, which was 26%. They got around 13%, which is still, it hurts, right? And it's something that they just even had another rate increase. But that's really one of the reasons why we're doing these kind of programs, right? Which is what's within our control as consumers. What can we do to our homes? What can we do with the way that we use energy more efficiently to really lower those bills, right? And of course, at AARP, we'll continue fighting those rate increases at the same time. But that's why we have these kind of education programs to empower consumers with that kind of knowledge. So I don't know if anyone else has any other kind of thoughts or questions about that, because it's on everyone's minds these days, especially as we head into the summer months.
It is. The one thing I'll say is that we hear all this about electricity prices increasing, but natural gas prices are also increasing substantially. And natural gas prices over the long term, like a 20-year horizon, which is when many of these appliances are good for, is supposed to increase at a higher rate than electrical rates. And so if you think about it from that perspective, there is a lot of modeling out there, and I know I'm an energy nerd, so I'll try and keep it simple, but there's a lot of modeling saying that electrification may be cost comparative now or save you a little bit of money, but that is actually going to increase over time as natural gas prices continue to go up at actually a worse rate than electrical prices. And one of the reasons for that is that as people get off of natural gas, the amount of people paying left on natural gas to pay for that infrastructure will be divided by a smaller and smaller amount of people. So it's actually thought that those who kind of electrify last will be paying even more for natural gas because they will be burdened with more of those infrastructure costs, upkeep costs. So there is a bit of a long game here if we're talking about appliances that, again, last 10, 20, 30 years. It might take a little bit of time to see those savings. So that's one thing. The second would be there are options for solar and battery storage, which means you don't have to be beholden to PG&E's rate increases. For electricity, you still would for natural gas. So there's more kind of freedom and flexibility options with electricity. And the last thing I'll mention is that's again why we also look at efficiency first, because if you can just reduce the amount that you need to run those appliances, then even if prices go up, you've kind of helped lower your own costs. So those would kind of be, it is true, electric rates are increasing. There is some uncertainty of whether it will take 3 years or 5 years for these things to kind of switch up in terms of prices. But there's just, when you look at things out, natural gas just doesn't look good, frankly, in those models, in pretty much any of those scenarios. So I believe in the high efficient electric appliances. We put on solar and battery storage earlier this year. And so, now we're kind of, working on our own kind of little microgrid and hub, and I don't have to worry about PG&E's 30% rate increase.
Thank you so much for sharing your individual perspective. Gilly or Jenny, did you want to chime in at all on that? It's a big topic. Makes sense.
I'll chime in and say, I just want to reemphasize Emily's point that there is a reason that we look at efficiency first. It might not be cost savings right now, could be cost savings in the future, but it is energy savings. You are consuming less. And so there's a lower likelihood that you will need to be paying even more in the future.
Thanks so much for that. Okay, so it looks like we have just a couple more minutes left, and we had and I think this was Emily, you had a QR code that you shared on one of your slides. If you can actually just don't share that yet, because we would like to get people to do that. I actually saw a hand being raised by one of our participants. If you can, Steph, if you can say your question very, very quickly, we'll go ahead and hear you out.
Thank you so much. You mentioned something about PG&E and their rates, and I noticed on my bill, the for electricity, the actual fee for the electricity was lower than the delivery fee. The delivery fee was more. So can you guys speak to that, which was really frustrating?
This is where I have to say I'm not, we're not a utility company. I do know that the delivery fees do cost a lot. Those are kind of fixed costs for infrastructure, similar to what I kind of recalled or mentioned about natural gas. Infrastructure for utilities is made on a long-term basis, and so they kind of figure out what those costs are to maintain gas pipelines, electric transmission lines, and that's kind of where some of those delivery fees come in. But if you had more detailed questions about those and what they consist of, then you would have to reach out to your utility directly.
Thank you.
Well, thanks so much for that. So Emily, if you could share very quickly that QR code, because I know that some people might want to learn a little bit more about the rebates and tax credits that are currently available, that would be great. And then we can end out our presentation here. But and I think, and actually while you pulled that up too, Alma asks in the chat, are there rebates or incentives for battery backup? Does anyone have a very quick answer to that?
There are some out there. Check what switch is on. The best thing out there really at the moment is there is a 30% federal tax credit for solar and battery storage. So honestly, that 30% is huge, taking a third off the price. And then in the state of California, there's also something called the Self-Generation Incentive Program, or SGIP, which you can Google, which offers a rebate of, oh gosh, I'm gonna mess it up, but it's by kilowatt hour for battery backup. So because for some reason the math isn't mathing in my head very simply, I would just say for a 10 kilowatt hour backup system, which is pretty typical, you could get up to $2,500 for a rebate there. And that should be really easy math, but it's not coming to me. So there are some rebate programs out there. We don't have them through BayREN, but definitely there is stuff.
Great. Okay.
And on the QR code, just since that was a draft, and in case for some reason those QR codes don't actually work, I'm just going to drop the link in the chat.
Perfect. So yeah, if you could just put that into the chat, that would be great. And we'll go ahead and just keep folks on so that they can get it and copy and paste it or click on it there. But thank you so much, everyone, for joining today. We really appreciate that. And Thanks again for your great questions for our panelists, and also a round of applause for our panelists, Gilly from the Department of Energy, Emily from Bayren, and Jenny, who has been working on her own Power Your Savings journey and has had a great career in energy efficiency. But thank you so much for a great conversation today. And as you can see in the chat before you leave today, we've got those links that have just been put on there, and I will also